Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into Algeria's incredibly ambitious reform journey. It's a really high-stakes balancing act, trying to meet the tough standards of global finance on one hand, while completely rebuilding the social contract with its own people on the other.
All right, let's just dive right in with the numbers, because they tell a fascinating story. What you're looking at here is the heart of Algeria's economic puzzle. On one side, you've got new, non-hydrocarbon sectors growing at a pretty healthy 4.2%. But the traditional engine of the entire economy, oil and gas, is actually shrinking. This mismatch creates a huge tension, and it's what's forcing this urgent need for change.
So yeah, this economic picture really puts Algeria at a critical crossroads. The old model, the one they've relied on for decades, it's just not enough anymore to guarantee a stable future. It's forcing a really hard look at how to build a more resilient and, frankly, a more modern economy.
And this is a huge vulnerability, something the IMF has really keyed in on. Because the economy is so incredibly dependent on oil and gas, when global energy prices go on a roller coaster, Algeria's entire national budget goes right along for the ride. That kind of volatility makes diversification not just some nice, long-term goal, it's an immediate, absolute necessity for stability.
Okay, so that brings us to one of the most urgent items on the agenda, and this one involves the global financial system. You could say Algeria is undergoing a massive financial health check right now, with the whole world kind of looking over its shoulder.
At the center of this whole process is an organization called the FATF, that's the Financial Action Task Force. The easiest way to think of them is as the world's financial watchdog. They're the ones who set the international standards for fighting money laundering and the financing of terrorism. You'll hear it called AML/CFT, to basically try and keep the entire system clean.
And right now, Algeria finds itself on what's known as the gray list. Now, it's not a sanction, not exactly, but it is a very serious warning. It's a signal to global investors and banks that a country has some strategic weaknesses in how it fights financial crime. It puts them under a microscope until they can prove their systems are really up to snuff.
So, the big question is, how do you get off this list? Well, Algeria is working through a pretty specific three-part action plan. First, they need to get better at supervising financial institutions based on risk. Second, and this is a big one, they have to get accurate, beneficial ownership information. That just means figuring out who really owns and profits from a company so people can't hide behind anonymous shell corporations. And third, they've got to get tougher on enforcing sanctions designed to cut off money to terrorist groups.
And look, the government is saying all the right things. This quote from an IMF report shows they've officially underscored their commitment to getting off the gray list. And it's not just talk. They're getting direct technical help from partners like the IMF to actually rewrite their laws and get these new strategies in place.
And you can see that commitment is turning into real action. I mean, check this out. As of late 2024, they're already making solid progress on 12 of the 13 action items from the FATF. We're talking about new guidelines on beneficial ownership and financial sanctions actually being published. These are tangible, concrete steps forward.
But here's the thing. Cleaning up your financial house for international watchdogs, that's only one half of this incredibly complex story. The other battle, which is just as important, is the one happening at home. Because at the exact same time, the Algerian government is grappling with this absolutely monumental task of reforming its social contract, that fundamental, unwritten deal between the state and its citizens.
And if you just looked at the top-line numbers, you'd think, wow, Algeria has a very generous welfare state. I mean, the country spends almost 9% of its entire GDP on social protection. Just to put that in perspective, that is nearly double the average for other Arab states. It's a huge financial commitment.
But where is all that money actually going? This is where it gets really complicated. A staggering 85% of that money in 2021 went to keeping energy prices artificially low. Now, cheap gas and electricity sound great, right? The problem is the benefits are not targeted at all. They disproportionately help the people who consume the most energy, who, let's be honest, are often not the ones who need the help the most. And this creates a really powerful disconnect. So the state is spending billions on support, but according to this Chatham House survey, almost 70% of Algerians feel that the wealth gap is actually getting worse. There's this deep public feeling that the system just isn't working for everybody.
So what you have is this core paradox. On one side, you've got the government spending massive sums on a social safety net. But on the other, you have the public feeling in huge numbers that the gap between the rich and poor is only getting wider. It's a crystal clear sign that the current subsidy model just isn't delivering fair results.
So all of this brings us to the path forward for Algeria. And the key thing to realize is that it's not about choosing one of these reforms over the other. It's about tackling both of these massive challenges at the same time.
Ultimately, any kind of success is going to hinge on this dual strategy. On one front, you've got to strengthen your financial governance, get off that FATF gray list, and attract the global investment you need to grow. And on the other front, you've got to modernize that social contract, reform subsidies so that support is targeted, efficient, and actually reduces inequality.
And so this leaves us with the final and really the defining question. Successfully navigating this two-front reform is going to require an incredible amount of political will and technical skill. Can Algeria balance the very real, very tough demands of the international financial system with the urgent social needs of its own population? How they answer that is the challenge that will shape the country's future for years to come.